Hey, it's Mirna from Trainer's Toolbox. Welcome to the Trainer's Toolbox podcast, a place where you can discover practical and effective tools and tips to make your workshops more insightful, engaging, and memorable. You are at the right place if you're looking to become the best trainer you can be and design truly impactful learning experiences. Ready? Let's dive in. Focusing on using our strengths more than focusing on fixing our weaknesses is one of the best things we can do. It's one of the best things for our performance. It's something that will give us more energy in life, protect us from burnout. It's something that will fuel joy and positive emotions and well-being in our life. Using our strengths more will make us feel more authentic. And it's also one of the best roads to mastery because we are already starting developing something we are good at, and there we truly have a chance to really go high in our skills and abilities. So when we look into the science and into much of our research from positive psychology, it all points that focusing more on our strengths, using our strengths more, is one of the best things we can do. Yet, when we come to our clients or even with ourselves or our participants, and we say, hey, let's focus on strengths more than weaknesses, guess what? It's not happening. It's really hard to make people focus on positive more. I'll give you an example. You just delivered a presentation. It went actually pretty well. And then a colleague of yours gives you feedback. Whatever it was, speech, presentation, workshop, doesn't matter. A colleague, co-facilitator, or whoever gives you feedback. And they say, wow, I loved it. It was so engaging. It was really interesting. I love how you designed it, the whole structure, all these surprises in it. I really, really enjoyed it, and I feel like I learned a lot. Maybe the only thing I would change is you were rushing a bit. What stays with you? Where do you put all of your attention? Of course, in that one bit that they say that was negative. It's very common for our brain, also because of negativity bias, our evolutionary evolved preference, you would say, to lean more towards what is negative, what needs to be fixed, what is danger to some point, instead of leaning into what's positive. Yet in positive psychology, we're uncovering how much more value there is in really focusing on positives. So today I want to share with you one metaphor that is really powerful, that you can work with your participant, with your clients, to share it, that can actually support this more of this strengths-based approach, not only in head-based way and research-based, but also in a bit of heart-based way. You know, when we share stories and metaphors, they pull people in more, they're more engaging, they paint the picture much more vividly. So it's a really powerful tool. I will share the metaphor initially that you can always use just as a vivid image, but this metaphor, it's way more than that. You can really develop it and push it into a powerful tool. You can use it practically as a structure and as a framework to explore many aspects and facets of our well-being, of our life, of our work. So I'll start simple, and you can always stay there and use it like that, but I'll also develop it into a more complex tool that you can actually leverage and use. Now, I will attach to this episode some really powerful tools and extra materials that can help you to use this even more. One of them is Miro board template that you can use truly to guide clients and participants through the whole process of exploring their life or their work based on this metaphor. It's going to be linked in the episode description, and also some blog posts and summary of this episode, but also some blog posts that takes you a little bit deeper, a little bit further into this topic. Also, the next episode I'm recording, well, next one will be guest episode, but after that, there will be one more episode, so coming up 1 month after this one, about overusing our strength. So you definitely might want to check out that one too, if this is area of your interest. Now, getting to the fun stuff, the metaphor. The metaphor is that us in our life, we are a little bit like sailboat, and we are moving through our life literally like a sailboat. You know, we have a certain direction. That direction sometimes changes. Sometimes we change it more intentionally, sometimes a bit less intentionally. There are many elements around us that influence our path, like sea and the weather. And we kind of move forward and have a certain, direction in life. And we are just like that sailboat. And when we think of ourselves like a sailboat, we can recognize two elements. One is the hull of our boat, the body of our boat, and that body will always come with some weaknesses, with some holes. If you ever have been on a sailing boat, you will know there is not a single sailboat that doesn't have a bit of a leak, no, and that doesn't have some places where water is running in. And every one of us will have different weaknesses in ourselves. At the same time, we can see our sails as our strengths. Now, of course, if we have big holes and big weaknesses that sabotage us and that threaten to sink us, then of course us, our mindset, the captain of our boat, we have to focus on managing those weaknesses to a point that they don't sink us. But at the same time, one thing that we are in our life often prone to do too much is to spend all the time looking for holes, managing holes, over controlling the holes, looking what else could we be fixing and fine-tuning. And at the same time, sails remain neglected. And that's really pity, because the sails that are truly our strength, that's what propels us forward. When we use the sails, that's when we have energy, that's when it's fun, that's when we feel good, that's when we have so much more a pull forward. That's when we actually take ourselves somewhere. So the power really lies in using those sails and just managing the holes up to a level that they don't make us sink, and really focusing on the sails. How can I use the sails? Because if you think also in terms of performance, in terms of goals, in terms of energy and how it feels, sails are where everything good is. If we just manage the holes, we won't move from a single spot. We will just be floating around and managing those holes. There will be no progress, there will be no performance. Yet if we focus on the sails while still managing the holes to a level that they don't sink us, that will really propel us forward. That will really give us the power, the energy, and everything positive. Now, as I said, I love using this already just as an image, because when you introduce it like that, people get a whole different feeling about how they could be using and thinking about their strengths. And it's just a nice way to open up their mind into using a bit more, like focusing a bit more on their strengths, really focusing on exploring them more and seeing how they can use them more. But as I said, we can also develop this into a really powerful tool. And I present you here the full sailboat metaphor. And when we talk about the full sailboat metaphor, then we are still the sailing boat, right? And we are still the core of that metaphor. But we can also think of many other elements on that boat. And you will see them named on the visual if you're following on the video. If not, you can also check it in attached Miro board. But basically the full metaphor has 8 different elements. One of them is water, the sea. And that's basically reality and environment around us. The second element is the steering wheel. That's our needs, our values, meaningful directions we are taking in life. Third element is our destination. As a boat has a destination, so we have certain goals and wishes. It's sort of like a map and destination we want to reach. Then, of course, there are leaks, which I already mentioned, weaknesses, also ineffective coping in terms of our coping mechanisms or resilience, the things we do in a suboptimal way, that's our leaks. Then we have strengths. And strengths are, of course, the sails. Sails in this metaphor are strengths, but also any sort of our resources and effective ways of coping and effective ways to be resilient. Then we have the compass. And the compass in this case and in this metaphor, it's more of our emotions, feelings, intuitions, and internal feedback to things that are happening around us. And then finally we have the weather as number 7. Weather is any uncontrollable circumstances around us, any things in life that push us in different directions than we would want them. And then finally we have 8 other boats. That's other people in our life, maybe peers, maybe competitors in a way, anyone else who is on a similar journey, even though they have journey on their own. Now, next to these 8 elements, often we also pull in the element of the captain and working with kind of the mindset of the captain and how it is important where captain puts the intention and attention, and how it is important how captain thinks about the circumstances, and that they have a lot of awareness of which of these elements are internal and we can actually control them and work with them, and which are external and maybe we don't have as much control over them. But that's then a whole different level of metaphor already. Captain and captain mindset, one metaphor that I also use often, but more when working with mindset, with attitudes, with our thoughts and thinking patterns, and how can we make these more productive. A whole different topic. If you're curious about this one, let me know on LinkedIn or replying to a newsletter, and maybe I do also an episode about working with mindset and the metaphor of the captain, and this thin line between being proactive but not over-controlling. But for today, our focus is back on the sailboat metaphor. So when we have these 8 elements, we can play with this template and this framework with people who we are guiding in their exploration of their strengths in different ways. And one of the ways can be just to also discuss a little bit this ratio between elements we actually can control and influence and the ones that are out of our control. But then one way can also be to actually go step by step by each of the elements and explore each of them in a set of different questions, and just guide people to think, where would you take this? How is this working for you right now? And in that way, we can go through all 8 elements, or we can go through all 8 of them briefly and then dive in deeper into the one that shows up to be relevant. So we can take it in different ways. We can take it more linear, exploring it as 8 steps of a journey and self-exploration, or exploring each briefly and then taking few where we really want to dive in deeper with our coachee or our group if we are facilitating with this metaphor. I'll give you just 2 quick examples how we could deepen that element a little bit. One example could be if we talk about compass, then we talk about how compass, in a way, it's like our intuition and emotion and feelings and certain internal guidance we have around situations. And within that topic, we can explore how, in a way, these emotions are always a feedback about our direction in life, how positive emotions give us an idea that we are on the right track, and uncomfortable emotions show us that something needs attention in our life, that we can really extend that far into emotional intelligence and just working with emotions in general, exploring what kind of emotions show up often for people in our group. If even if we work with a team or with a group that's individuals working on their own topics, they can explore further what might be some different emotions that show up for them often, what might be the message behind these emotions. We want to work out how emotions are always a data but not a direction. We won't necessarily listen to it. They're just a way of getting information and feedback. Where are we? What is happening for us? And we can even use emotions to work on clarifying our values, and also to strengthen our sales when we actually work with emotions and pay attention to them properly. Because sales will give us a lot of positive emotions, but equally so, positive emotions will point us to what are our sales and where do our strengths lie. And negative emotions will sometimes show us that we stayed too long with weaknesses, or maybe using our learned skills that are not truly our strengths. Maybe actually that's a good place to clarify very briefly the difference between skills and strengths. Skills are something we are good at, but it can mean that it's natural or that we learned it. On the other hand, strengths are things we are naturally good at. So strengths are also skills, but they also have characteristics of being energizing for us and feeling authentic when we use them. So we feel good, we are good at it, but we also feel good and it energizes us. On the other hand, when we use skills, we are good at it, but we may or may not feel energized by it. If we do, it points that this skill is also our strength. If we feel it draining or non-energizing, then usually it will mean it's like a learned skill, something we developed, became good at, but it's not naturally actual strength. And in the context of our well-being and sustainable performance and energy, we do want to, because of that, spend more time focusing on using our strengths and fall back to learn skills when needed, but not spend like majority and all of our time and most of our time in learned skills. So it's interesting to put also learned skills in that arena, apart from sales, the strengths, and then weaknesses, the holes, that there is also this space in the middle, which is things that we need to do, but they're not necessarily always energizing and they might be a bit more difficult for us. Now, on the Miro template I'm attaching with this episode, you can explore all 8 elements to bigger depth with more tips like what does each represent. And there is also a template that will help you guide the group, or you can also try it for yourself and just go through it and ask you some relevant questions about each of these elements. And you can use the same elements with the groups or flip those into different variation. Please do notice with this metaphor and with this tool how much it can scale. We can build like half a day or full day workshop just on this, diving deeper into each of the elements, or we can simply introduce this as a 5-minute metaphor to support the other content we are working with strengths, or we can make it anywhere in the middle. It's very fluid, it's very flexible. I wanted to share with you one more example of one more element, and that's the weather. So weather in this metaphor represents external events, things that are beyond our control. So on one side, they can be favorable, things that support us when we are lucky, like winds in our sails, or they can also be challenging, like different storms or negative weather conditions. One thing that is important to explore with this metaphor is that weather is out of our control. We can control still our direction, even though that direction might be tougher to take depending on the weather. So our direction, our values, and we can also control our response and our actions. So basically how much we engage our strengths, which strengths do we play into, and how do we go about it. So in that aspect, resilience to any kinds of circumstances and weather really comes from this adapting effectively and not trying to over control the circumstances. So I'm sure you can see how with this aspect we can totally take it in a big direction, either of resilience or dealing with negative emotions or dealing with stress, so many different variations, or just that circle of control or even mindset work. So there are many, like mindset in terms of choosing what do we want to be active, proactive, and controlling about, and when do we want to actually adapt internally. So there are many ways that we can, and many other topics and theories that we can way deepen and connect with from different aspects of this whole metaphor. Now, I would be very curious, how would you use this? And by the way, this is the type of the topic that I would explore in Positive Psychology Toolbox, being it that you join me there for a masterclass or for a full course on Positive Psychology Toolbox. It's also one of the topics we would explore often in trainers' conversations in the community, where we often exchange ideas and metaphors and tools and images like this and discuss them. So that's definitely one place where if you want to keep on learning about things like that, discuss them, maybe have a group to test them with in a safe environment. I do want to invite you to check out the Trainers Conversations community, because it's a place that's built exactly to have a community to play with all these things in more permanent and proactive way. We also play with metaphors a lot within the storytelling course, where we deepen how much you can actually engage people and pull people into building stories that support your learning process and your content. So advanced storytelling live course might be also something that might be interesting for you if this metaphor resonated with you. So on one side we have positive psychology, where the content of Sailboat and strengths come from. On the other hand, we have this area of how do you pack your content in metaphors and stories. And on the third side, we also have this space to play with this, the community to test it and try it out. Now, the question is really for you, an invitation. 2 big questions. First one, where could you use strengths-based approach more? Like in your life, in your work. Maybe you could use it directly to really bring it in as something, hey, I'm relying on strengths more. I really want to explore the strengths-based approach, diving deeper. Or maybe you want to bring it in more indirectly. Maybe you work with leaders or with presentation skills and you just want to sprinkle a bit of strength there in a more integrative way. Either of these is really powerful, but see how can I look for strengths, use strengths more. And this is one of the topics I'm really passionate about and with which I worked a lot. So I'll be definitely exploring it more in future podcasts and blogs. Definitely get in touch and let me know which aspect of it would you be interested in. What are your questions? I'll be happy to extend on that. Best way to contact me is always LinkedIn or through a Trainers Toolbox newsletter, replying to it. If you're not on the newsletter yet, maybe this is the time to join. It comes weekly with always different tools and insights and updates from Trainers Toolbox. Now, the second question I would invite you to explore is more of the meta side. Where could you use more metaphors? You know, which other metaphors would be relevant for you and interesting? Which metaphors do you want to explore in your work? Which metaphors could make your work more vivid, more colorful? Because think of this. If I come into a room and I say, we'll talk about strengths today, and they're so great because they're good for your performance, they're good for your energy, they're good for your well-being, so let's work on strengths. Or if I come in that same room and I'm like, using strengths, it's kind of like using our sails if we would be a sailboat. And then I explore the whole metaphor. I get totally different attention and engagement on that. I get totally different level of curiosity from people, and then I can still support it with the science-based data. I can still support it with the facts and bits and all the valuable tools, but still metaphor pulls in people in a totally different way and gives them clarity and vivid image about the topic we're talking about in a totally different way. So I do want to invite you to think a little bit, where else could you be using metaphors? Which are some of metaphors you're already relying and using? And which are some new ones you could explore and add? In which parts of your content or your workshops would there be space for more metaphors? I will also link a Miro board with around 20 different metaphors that you can use as examples and introduce to your work. It's not as elaborate and as deep as I unpacked the sailing boat one. It's just sharing some ideas with you, but maybe you find some powerful ideas there as well. These I created for trainers conversations for the community, but then I decided to share them also with podcast listeners. There is also a podcast episode on Trainers Toolbox about metaphors. I think it's number 9 or number 10. I will link it up. It's maybe also one that you would want to check out. Now, this episode today was a little bit different in terms of topic. Normally, I much more focus on trainers' skills and how can we develop those skills. Today, I chose to focus on specific content, a specific tool to share with you that's more content-based, which I recognize can make it less relevant for some and more relevant for others. So I would be very curious of your feedback. What other similar topics would you like to hear? Did you enjoy this change in a perspective to focus more on content and tool versus more of meta that I usually cover? What would you like to see next? I would super appreciate your feedback to make better decisions for next episodes. And as always, you can send me that on LinkedIn or by replying to any of Trainers Toolbox newsletters. Thank you for joining me today to explore this exciting topic with me, and do let me know how are you using it. Thank you for exploring this topic with me. I hope you found some exciting ideas and valuable tools that you will use already today. Remember, they only work if you put them in practice, but then they make all the difference. If you enjoy Trainers Toolbox podcast, do leave a rating and review. It does mean a lot. And if you haven't done it yet, click on the links in the episode descriptions and discover free materials and valuable resources to dive in deeper. See you in the next episode or at Trainers Toolbox newsletter.